A typical day in Kochi took a turn when Bollywood's golden couple, Devika Marwa and Arjun Khanna, arrived. Sure, Ravi played it cool, but the glint in his eyes said it all. This wasn't just any case. In recent years, Ravi's been making headlines, earning the title Poirot of the South, and amassing a loyal fan base. Celebrities flocked to him, dragging their emotional and literal baggage, the heaviest being the Star of the East, a prized diamond, now owned by the Bollywood royalty, seated across him.
In my quarters, Devika and Arjun laid out their problem. Threatening letters demanded the diamond's return. My task, protect the gem and find the sender.
Ravi was the picture of calm, or at least he tried to be. It's not every day a film star hands you a mystery wrapped in diamonds.
The Star of the East wasn't just a diamond, it was a legend with a curse. The more I dug, the darker the history became.
Ravi's focus was like a laser. The mind is everything, he'd say. Though today, I think it was half on the case, half on impressing our glamorous client.
Suresh Aiyer, the local historian, filled in the blanks, the curse, the threats, it all lined up too neatly.
History had its grip on Ravi, but so did the allure of solving a puzzle with a star watching closely.
Back at my quarters, the letters spoke volumes, unique handwriting, high-end paper. This was someone close. Too close.
Ravi's eye for detail caught what others missed, but let's face it, he was also keeping his cool for an audience.
Devika and Arjun had their suspects. A bitter ex-assistant, a shady business rival. Each story was a thread waiting to unravel. I tracked down the leads. Alibis were tight, but nerves were frayed. Something wasn't adding up.
Ravi moved through suspects like a dancer through steps, precise, purposeful, and a little bit showy.
Over coffee, the pieces clicked. The assistant and the rival, they were in this together. The game was afoot.
A good espresso and a great idea. That's how Ravi worked. The connections were there. He just had to pull the strings.
I set the trap. A public event, the diamond on display, and two nervous suspects ready to make their move.
Ravi was orchestrating a grand finale, and everyone played their part, whether they knew it or not.
At the event, I watched them. Their nerves betrayed them. The final act was about to begin.
The tension was electric. Ravi was ready to pounce. But the real trick, keeping that signature cool under pressure. And that Ravi does best.
The trap was set, the bait dangled, a diamond gleaming under the spotlight, yet no one took the bite. Instead, the assistant and the associate were caught in a different web altogether, an affair that was less about jewels and more about shame. Not the result we wanted, but it opened a door I hadn't seen before.
Ravi's intuition is sharp, but it's his ability to adapt that makes him exceptional.
Priya, she's my trusted ally and a sharp mind in her own right. A journalist with the insight of a psychologist. She's my Watson in this tangled web of mysteries. Meeting Devika after the trap fizzled out was like stepping into a storm dressed as calm. She wanted answers, and I needed a new angle. We had to dig deeper, find the cracks in the surface where the real culprits might be hiding.
This wasn't just about a diamond anymore. It was about people and their hidden lives.
So, back to the drawing board. Suresh Aiyer had more to say about this cursed gem. A diamond only a woman should possess, he insisted, bringing bad luck to any man who dared. I was skeptical, but history is full of such tales. Kings torn to pieces, sultans imprisoned. Folklore maybe, but fear can be a powerful motivator. Back in my quarters, the puzzle pieces were beginning to form a picture, but the assistant and the associate didn't fit as neatly as I'd hoped. The curse of the diamond, sure, it added to the drama, but it wasn't the whole story. If they weren't behind the threats, then who was? Who had the nerve to warn Devika if it wasn't someone close? A larger web was at play here, and I was just starting to see its threads.
Ravi's methodical approach can seem cold, but it's not without empathy. He sees through the facades people wear, understanding their fears and motivations. The unconscious is the true psychical reality. And in this case, the reality was shaping up to be darker than we'd imagined.
Devika's anxiety was genuine, too genuine for an act. Arjun, however, was still too composed. A man hiding something, or just confident in his lies? The game is afoot, as Holmes would say, and I had to play my part carefully.
Ravi's strength lies in his ability to see patterns where others see chaos. His conversations with Devika and Arjun were like chess matches, each move calculated.
The diamond's history wasn't just a story, it was a blueprint for human folly. From the Portuguese king who met a gruesome end to the sultan who lost everything, each tale added weight to the myth of the Star of the East. Was it just superstition, or was there something more?
Ravi doesn't ignore the psychological impact of such legends. There was an unsettling sense, like we were being watched, an instinct I couldn't shake. When I mentioned it to Ravi, he didn't just nod along, he already knew. He had that look, the one that meant he was onto something, and it was clear he was going to do something about it.
The surveillance began. Arjun, Devika, and now this mysterious figure shadowing them. It was clear there were more players in this game than we initially thought.
The tension was palpable, but Ravi thrived in it. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity, and Ravi knew it well. As we closed in on the shadow, the pieces were finally starting to fall into place. The truth was within reach, and with it, the resolution to a mystery as old as the diamond itself.
In the end, the truth isn't just about facts, it's about understanding the minds behind the actions. The curse, the history, the human folly. It all leads back to that one point of focus, the Star of the East. And with every step, I was getting closer to the heart of it all. Menon House was a fortress, tight security, every precaution taken. Yet, the Star of the East vanished from a hidden spot only Devika knew about. When they returned from the shoot, the diamond was gone, leaving behind a scene of chaos too deliberate to be genuine. Arjun's alibi was solid, handling production issues at the shoot. But as I looked at the mess, it became clear. This wasn't the work of an outsider. The thief hadn't left Menon House.
Ravi's intuition was sharp as ever. He knew that sometimes the answer is right in front of you, hidden in plain sight. The frantic energy in the house, the too perfect mess, it was all a cover. But for what? And more importantly, by whom? The human mind often seeks to conceal, but in doing so, it leaves traces. Ravi was focused on those traces.
The room showed no signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no shattered windows. This was an inside job, executed flawlessly by someone who knew the layout, the routines, and perhaps the fears of those inside. I gathered the staff, pressing them for details. There were too many inconsistencies, too much nervousness. Something wasn't adding up.
Interviews can be like therapy. People reveal more in what they don't say than what they do. Ravi's questions were surgical. Cutting through the facade each staff member tried to maintain. He wasn't just looking for answers. He was looking for the right kind of silence, the hesitation that betrayed truth.
Arjun's alibi was as polished as his demeanor, but I've seen too many performances to be fooled by a smooth delivery. His story held up, but his eyes didn't. There was something there, something he was holding back. I decided to check his alibi, but the truth was, I knew he was telling the truth.
Devika was distraught, her fear palpable. Ravi's approach shifted. Empathy now, not interrogation. He needed her calm, needed her to focus on anything out of the ordinary, anyone she might suspect. Ravi's questions weren't just about finding the thief. They were about understanding the emotional landscape that this crime had disrupted.
In the garden, I needed space to think, to let the pieces fall into place. That's when I noticed the gardener, jumpy, anxious. He'd seen something, someone moving near the window when the house was supposed to be quiet during siesta. The shadowy figure wasn't an intruder, it was someone comfortable enough to be there in broad daylight.
Fear is a powerful motivator, but so is guilt. The gardener's reluctance melted under Ravi's calm persistence. He described a figure, someone moving with purpose, someone who wasn't afraid of being seen. It was enough for Ravi to know. The thief was still inside, lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike again.
I headed to the security room, reviewed the footage. It was grainy, the angles poor, but there it was, a shadow slipping past, matching the gardener's description. This was an inside job, and the thief was too comfortable in the house's labyrinth of rooms. My next stop was the basement, a place often overlooked, where secrets are easily buried.
Ravi's instincts led him to the basement, a hidden door, a small room filled with plans, notes, evidence of a conspiracy that went deeper than a simple theft. The pieces were connecting, but the picture was far from complete. Whoever was behind this wasn't just after the diamond. They were orchestrating something bigger.
I confronted one of the staff, nervous, too eager to deny involvement. Under pressure, the cracks appeared, revealing more than they intended. The truth was close, but not quite within reach. I kept watch, waiting for them to lead me to the mastermind.
On the rooftop, Ravi pieced it all together. The lies, the deceit, the motives. Then, a figure moving in the distance, sneaking away from the house, a small bag in hand. The thief hadn't left, but they were trying to now. The chase was on, and this time, there would be no escape.
The truth isn't just about what's stolen, it's about what's hidden. The thief had been inside Menon house all along, weaving a web of lies and deceit. But now, the game was ending, and I was about to catch the spider at the center of it all. The thief slipped through my fingers, but something was off. Too easy, too clean. As I watched the figure disappear into the night, it hit me. The diamond wasn't with them. They'd left Menon house empty-handed, but the real prize was still here, hidden somewhere in the chaos they'd created.
Ravi's instincts kicked in, anger tempered with precision. He gathered everyone in the study, ready to pull apart the web of lies that had been spun.
I laid out the facts, but the tension in the room was palpable. Everyone had something to hide. Each suspect, each lie, brought us closer to the truth, but the real challenge was keeping control as the pressure mounted. I needed to dig deeper, and private interviews were my only way forward.
In the study, Ravi's composure was a mask, a necessary tool to dissect the suspect's stories. Each one was a puzzle piece, and Ravi wasn't just asking questions. He was reading between the lines, searching for the cracks in their stories, and those cracks were starting to show.
Devika was next. She was shaken, defensive, and her story was inconsistent. She couldn't understand why someone close to her might betray her, but the signs were there. Subtle, but clear enough if you knew where to look. Her social circle was tighter than I'd expected, and the inconsistencies were adding up.
Devika's distress was real, but so was her confusion. Ravi's questions were gentle but probing, designed to uncover what she couldn't or wouldn't see. Her emotional state was both a shield and a window into the deeper conflicts at play. Ravi knew that understanding her was key to unlocking the entire case.
Arjun's calm was almost too perfect. He tried to play it off, make light of the situation, but I wasn't buying it. He was hiding something, and every smile, every casual remark, only made me more certain. His financials didn't add up, and I could see the strain behind his polished exterior.
Ravi's aloofness was deliberate, a way to keep Arjun balanced. He wasn't just looking for answers, he was watching how Arjun responded to the pressure. And in those moments, Ravi saw the cracks. Arjun's discomfort wasn't just about the questions, it was about what those questions threatened to reveal.
The staff was no less suspicious, nervous, inconsistent, and some were downright terrified. One attendant in particular flubbed facts left and right. They knew more than they were letting on, and I wasn't about to let them slip away without answering for it.
Interrogations aren't just about what's said, they're about what isn't. Ravi's approach was a mix of direct questioning and observation, watching how the staff reacted under scrutiny. The attendants' fear was telling, and it was clear they were hiding something crucial.
Out in the garden, I needed a moment to clear my head, but Priya's insight was invaluable. She pointed out the financial angles we hadn't fully explored. Insurance money, hidden motives, it all pointed to something bigger, something more calculated. We were getting closer, but the pieces still weren't fitting together perfectly.
Ravi's frustration was palpable, but so was his resolve. The financial aspects were a thread that needed pulling, and Ravi knew it. My job was to help him see the connections that weren't immediately obvious, to point out the psychological undercurrents driving this complex web of deceit.
Back in the library, the night was long and filled with shadows, documents, surveillance footage, timelines. I reviewed it all, searching for the one lead that would tie everything together. And then, there it was, a potential link between the suspects, a secret meeting, hidden in the details. I was ready to set a trap. I set the stage for the final act. Devika would be the bait, and I'd be watching from the shadows. The plan was risky, but it was the only way to draw out the real culprit.
The night was filled with tension, each moment stretching out as they waited for the culprit to make a move. It was a delicate balance between patience and action, and Ravi was walking that tightrope with precision.
Then the call came, threatening, demanding the return of the diamond. The stakes were raised, and the pressure was on. But it was exactly what I needed to push us over the edge, to force the mastermind into the open. I reassured Devika, but I knew the real confrontation was just beginning. In the dead of night, the criminals made their move, swift, brutal, and unexpected. They took control of Menon house, pulling Devika into the center of their demands. But they weren't here for jewels, they were here to send a message. The chaos they created was the perfect cover, but I was ready.
Fear filled the air, but Ravi was calm, even as the criminals took over.
As the criminals demanded everyone assemble, I stayed hidden, watching, waiting. The tension was electric, every second ticking down to the final confrontation. I was ready to make my move, ready to end this game once and for all.
Ravi's resolve was unbreakable. The criminals were playing a dangerous game, but they didn't realize that Ravi had already outmaneuvered them. The night wasn't over, and neither was this case. The truth was within reach, and Ravi was about to claim victory.
Menon house was a battleground. Chaos had erupted, and the criminals had taken control. But something felt off. Arjun's calm was too practiced, too deliberate. The attack on Devika pushed him closer to the edge, but he still held on, clinging to the last shreds of his composure. I watched from the shadows, ready to see how far he'd go to protect his lies.
Ravi's mind was a storm of possibilities. The night had unraveled into madness, and yet, amidst the fear and confusion, he saw the patterns. The attack on Devika was brutal in its realism, and Arjun's reaction was everything Ravi needed to confirm his suspicions. The tension in the room was suffocating, but Ravi knew exactly what he was doing.
The panic was palpable. Devika's injury triggered a wave of fear that spread through the room. Arjun was losing his grip, and I could see the cracks forming. He was terrified, and that terror was the key. The criminals pressed him, their threats pushing him to the brink. But I needed more. I needed him to break completely.
The fear in the room was real, but so was the careful orchestration behind it. Ravi was waiting for the moment when Arjun would finally give in, when the weight of his lies would crush him.
Then it happened. Arjun's resolve, shattered, cornered, and terrified, he started to unravel. The criminals closed in, demanding the truth, and I watched as the facade he'd built crumbled before my eyes. He confessed. His greed, his desperation, the plan to steal the diamond for insurance money. But even in defeat, he tried to fight back, reaching for a weapon in a last, desperate act.
But as Arjun lashed out, still clinging to his last vestiges of control, Ravi stepped forward, calm and in command. The situation was under control, but the real revelation was yet to come.
The truth was out, but the game wasn't over. Arjun was shocked, betrayed by his own actions, and as I stepped forward, I could see the realization dawning in his eyes. The criminals who had tormented him, who had forced the confession, they weren't who he thought they were. I revealed the final piece of the puzzle. The criminals were never after the diamond. They were part of my plan all along. It started with the details, the ones that most would miss. A stray dog hair clinging to Arjun's coat, white and coarse from the gardener's hound that only lingered near the back gate, yet Arjun claimed he never went near the gardens. Then, there was the faint scent of fresh varnish on his hands. Not something you'd notice unless you'd been near the table where the diamond was kept. The same table recently polished to remove fingerprints.
Ravi saw what others couldn't. The small scuff mark on the carpet near Devika's room. The kind left by a shoe, dragging in haste, stopping just short of the hidden drawer where the diamond was stored. Ravi noticed the hastily wiped glass on the study table. Arjun's fingerprints were too clean, too perfectly placed. He had tried to cover his tracks, but left one tiny detail, a single thread, caught on the corner of the table, matching the fabric of his jacket. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Ravi had orchestrated the entire operation, using former criminals to stage the perfect sting. The household, initially terrified, now stood in shock and relief as the truth became clear. Devika, safe and unharmed, could hardly believe it. But as she thanked Ravi, her gratitude pouring out, I saw something rare, a flicker of discomfort in Ravi's eyes. He was a man of action, not of accolades.
With the truth finally out, the tension in Menon house began to lift. But there was still one final task, understanding the full extent of Arjun's motives. In the garden, I gave him a chance to explain himself. His regret was real, his anger still simmering beneath the surface. But I needed to hear it, to close this chapter with the knowledge of why he'd risked everything for greed.
Ravi's empathy, his ability to see the humanity in even the most flawed individuals, was what set him apart. And in that moment, Arjun realized that he had been outplayed in every sense of the word.
The police arrived, and with them, the finality of justice. Arjun and his accomplices were led away, their fate sealed. The household watched in a mix of relief and solemnity, the weight of the night's event still heavy in the air. As I stood with Priya on the front porch, reflecting on the case, I couldn't help but appreciate the teamwork and the strategy that had brought us here. The case was closed, but the satisfaction of solving it lingered.
The night had been long, but the resolution was worth every moment of tension. Ravi's work was done, but the questions it raised about human nature, about the lengths people go to for greed, were still on his mind. As we stood on the rooftop, looking out over the city, I saw the weight of his role as a detective settle on his shoulders. But there was also a sense of peace, of closure. The case was over, and we were ready for whatever came next.